Hello, hello everyone. Welcome. Just while we're waiting for everybody to join the webinar, if you want to put your, um, hang on, sorry, yeah, if you want to just give us a wave on the chat, you're welcome. And also, while you're waiting, you can follow at Creative Access and at the Booksellers Association across our social media platforms because we'd love you to spread the word about what's going on. So, I can see the numbers creeping up. We'll give it 10 more seconds and then we will join. But thank you all very, very much for joining us today. We're super excited to have everyone with us. My name's Josie and I'm one of the founders of Creative Access, and I've been working very closely with the Booksellers Association for the past year or so, and in fact we've had for a much longer period of time. So this is really, really exciting opportunity for us to be able to talk about the phenomenal work that they do and booksellers around the country do. So thank you very much again for joining us. So if you're not familiar with Creative Access, we are a social enterprise and our mission is to support people from communities that have been historically marginalised or underrepresented in the creative industries to enter and then thrive once they're in there. So we have lots of different programs, and if you have a look on the website, you can learn more. But today we're here to talk about bookselling, and for those of you who are familiar with us, you'll be aware that we have done a lot historically in the publishing sector, but less so about the specific world of bookselling. And lots of you I know will be absolutely head over heels and very familiar with your local bookstores. So, but what does that mean? Is it possible to have a career in there? What can it lead on to? Is it a career on its own? We've had so many questions and discussions like that. So we're really thrilled to be joined by the most incredible panel today who are going to be talking a little more about that. So thank you for those of you who submitted questions in advance. You may have seen already that we are also running this in conjunction with a very exciting mentoring program. And if you hold on till the end of the webinar, we'll provide a little bit more information about that and how you apply in the eligibility program criteria for doing so. But in the meantime, I'm going to hand over shortly to Fleur, who's going to be leading this conversation. If you do have any questions, please submit them via the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen, and you can upvote each other's questions if there's something that you particularly want to know an answer to. And we'll also put in some information on there if there's any links that are referred to during the conversation. So that's about it from me. I will join you again later during the Q&A. But as I said, please do follow us on our social media platforms, all of us, and feel free to tweet or to follow us on Instagram and elsewhere. We will be recording this session, so it'll be available on our YouTube platform after today and via the link on the mentoring program application on the Creative Access website. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to the absolutely wonderful Fleur, who's owner of the Seven Oaks Bookshop in Kent, and is also has an extremely grand title because she is president of the current president of the Booksellers Association. So over to you, Fleur.
Thank you so much, Josie. And thank you to everybody for joining us today, whether you're joining us live at the moment or whether you're watching the recording. It's so nice to know that so many people are keen to hear more about bookselling. I'm joined by a brilliant panel of booksellers who I'm going to get to introduce themselves in just a moment. But I'd also like to thank them for giving up their time and very precious time in their bookshops for coming to talk to us today. So yeah, we're all here because we want to shine a light on our trade and encourage more people from all backgrounds and from all stages of their careers as well into bookselling. And we want to try and make our bookselling workforce more representative of the population as a whole. And so working with Creative Access is very much part of our mission to try to do that. It's great to be able to tell you about bookselling across the UK, and I hope that by the end of the session you'll have a real sense of what the daily life of a bookseller is like and the joys and challenges of bookselling on our high street. There will be lots of time for questions at the end, and so I hope that you do think of and you know, put your questions in the Q&A just like Josie said. So without further ado, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves and just give a little bit of background to their bookselling lives and careers. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to try to do this in order of where I can see everybody. So I'm going to start with Paul. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Right, thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here. I'm really very happy to be here. Thank you. My name is Paul. I work for Waterstones. I have worked for the company around about 30 years now, actually. I have been in various roles within the company. I'm based mainly in Bristol, but my role, you might have seen on the slide there, is an area people support. So ultimately, I travel around the Southwest, Waterstone stores, visiting booksellers, visiting the stores, and actually helping via the teams to create brilliant, beautiful bookshops and encourage and help booksellers to get to where they want to be, help them on their journey through the bookselling world and help them to progress and really be a part of that wonderful bookselling community that we're all a part of. I'm also very much around supporting new people into the business as well. And within Waterstones, we run an internship scheme, very much like the mentoring scheme, which we'll hear about later on from the BA. And it's to helping people to join the bookselling world and hopefully enjoy it.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Paul. Emily, would you like to go next?
Thanks for that. I'm Emily. I'm from the Hasmere Bookshop, and we are on the Surrey, West Sussex, Hampshire border. We sell both new and second-hand books. And actually, my journey with the Hasmere Bookshop started about 25 years ago when my mum started working in the shop. I ended up spending a lot of my teenage years just hanging around the shop, ending up pricing up cards or, doing the dusting. And it sort of evolved into a Saturday job. And I think I really loved seeing my mum in the shop and the connections she was making with people. So I continued working all the time I was at university. And when I graduated, I still kept my Saturday job, even though I started working a fairly dull office job. And I realized the days I was looking forward to most of being in the bookshop. So I quit my job and went full time in the bookshop. This coincided with the bookshop changing hands. The previous owner had been well into his 90s and had a very traditional way of doing things. We didn't get a computer until the mid noughties. Everything was microfiche, and we had to wear skirts to work, which definitely wasn't legal. And so it was a really nice opportunity that we then had to modernize the shop and kind of, although we weren't owning it, we got the chance to manage it, me and my mum, and we got to do all the things we'd talked about in the years that we were under quite an oppressive regime. So it was nice to have that freedom. And we managed the shop together for 5 years, right up until the pandemic. And my mum then decided to step back. She still works 2 days a week in the shop, and I manage the shop with a team of 5. And I love it. It's kind of like a second home to me. And yeah, I love what I do.
Thank you so much, Emily. I'll come to you, Amanda, now, please.
Hi, I'm Amanda, and I'm the owner and I run Truman Books, which is an independent bookshop and cafe in Yorkshire. We're halfway between Leeds and Bradford. And I opened a shop 4 years ago. It was a brand new shop. There had never been a bookshop in the village before. And that was my first entry into the world of bookselling, really, was opening my own bookshop. I had a 20-year career in travel before that, until the pandemic came along and kind of killed the travel industry off for a while. And so it was a massive career change for me, a big life switch up, but it's been such a joy. And so I'm really excited to be able to kind of share a little bit of that joy with you all today. The shop it's really a community focused shop. We're at the villages, there's maybe 30,000 people in the village. And we look at ourselves as like a community hub, really. People can come in just to chat about the weather, or they can come in and talk books. We run a lot of bookshop events in the bookshop and in external venues as well, which we also love. Bringing people together to talk about books and have bookie chat is something we really appreciate. I'm sure I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Helen.
Hi, my name's Helen and I own Wonderland Bookshop in Retford, which is North Nottinghamshire. Wonderland Bookshop is a children's only bookshop and we serve children of all ages from babies through to teenagers. I came to bookselling in 2019. Prior to that, I'd been a freelancer working in communications and I was head of PR for a sports governing body. The town had 2 second-hand bookshops owned by the same people, and I was in there so often. I was like part of the furniture. They needed another key holder, and one day they said to me, "Do you think you might like to work here one day a week?" And I said, "That sounds lovely." I'd always had a secret dream of being a bookseller, and I said yes. And they were second-hand bookshops back then. Fast forward 6 months, and very sadly, both bookshops closed down, and I made the decision to take on what was then known as the Barrister in Wonderland, which is now Wonderland Bookshop, as I felt that the town deserved a bookshop. I love children's books and I want children to have access to books. And that was back in November 2019, which turned out to be quite an interesting time to take on a bookshop. We'd had the shop 7 days when the town was hit by flooding, and then fast forward to March and COVID happened. But 5.5 years later, we're still here. We do lots of author events. We do lots of work with schools. We run various community initiatives to get books into the hands of children. I absolutely love what I do. It's the best job in the world. And I'm so excited to talk to everyone about it today. And thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Just a really quick bit on my bookselling journey. As Josie said at the beginning, I own the Seven Oaks Bookshop. I'll have been the owner there for about, well, it'll be 10 years come this November. I didn't start my shop either. It was first opened in 1948. I went to work there 2 days a week when I was sort of looking to return to the workplace after having my children, and very quickly was offered the opportunity to buy the shop when the current owners wanted to, well, the owners at the time wanted to retire. And with a mixture of a loan and their open-mindedness to letting me pay in installments for both the goodwill and the stock once I'd started trading, and so had a little bit of money behind me in order to be able to pay for that. So it was a mixture of those two things enabled me to become the owner. And it is a general bookshop. It's funny you describe yours as a village, Amanda. I think Seven Oaks only has about 40,000 inhabitants, and they very much think of themselves as a town. So yeah, so it's a general bookshop, and I think that just because of my background, I try to make sure that I keep as diverse a range of books as possible. I want to make sure that everybody feels welcome and can find themselves among the bookshelves in some way or another represented. So that's me. Right, so I'm going to move on to the questions. So I'm going to start by asking this question to both Paul and Amanda. So Amanda, maybe if you would like to go first with, how did you get into bookselling? What made you make that decision?
So in the hot summer of 2020, when we were on lockdown and I had been made redundant, so I wasn't working, I was looking for another job, and all the jobs, I'd loved my career in travel. I love travel. I'm passionate about traveling. And all the other jobs I was looking at, I just were a bit dull. And this idea of a bookshop that I think had been there for 30 odd years just kept popping up into my head. And 2020 seemed like a year to do something a little bit bold. So I thought, let's explore it and see what it's all about. So I went on a study trip to Hay-on-Wye, where there's obviously tons of bookshops, and I went and chatted to lots of booksellers. And the joy I got every time I walked into a bookshop, I thought, why wouldn't I want to have that every day? And I talked a lot to the Booksellers Association, who were hugely helpful, because I knew about running businesses. I knew nothing about publishing or bookselling. And they did a really useful course called How to Open Your Own Bookshop or something like that. And they had a little book that I bought and became my Bible that kind of walks you through the process of how you do it. And I just kind of taught myself. And it was a huge learning curve, I have to say. Like, the publishing world isn't that transparent or logical always. And I'm still learning a huge amount every day. But I just kind of figured it out as I went along.
Thank you. And yes, the same question to Paul. How did you get into bookselling?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, to be honest, I was just a real avid reader as a child. I love reading. I got into it from a very young age, and all the way through my schooling, it was just a passion for books and a real enjoyment. And I knew kind of that's what I wanted to do. Somehow, I wasn't sure what, but I used to go into my local bookshop and just look at all the books and spend a lot of time there and just really enjoy that sort of community, that inclusivity around it all, and just really enjoyed it. And then ultimately, when I finished my A levels, and I thought, really, this is really what I want to do. So I just started applying for a bookshop jobs, and I was very fortunate to get one. And I have been a bookseller ultimately ever since. So really, it's all just about loving books, being around books, and just enjoying that real community as well. So that's ultimately how I got into it.
Thank you so much, Paul. So now I'm going to ask, what do our panelists think are the key skills needed to be a good bookseller? So I'm going to come to you first, Helen. What do you think?
This is a really good question. I mean, I think one of the most important things is the willingness to learn, because I feel like I'm learning something different, every day, and that's really important. The other thing I would mention as well, I think it's really important to be a good listener, particularly in a children's bookshop. People come in, family members, friends, etc., wanting to buy books to gift to children in their life. And actually, book purchasing is quite a personal thing, and it's a very thoughtful thing, particularly when you're buying a gift for somebody. And those purchases are really considered, and sometimes people want to come and talk and ask advice. And it's really important to listen to what they're saying, to understand what their needs are about the child they're purchasing for. So, yeah, I'd say it's really important to be a good listener and really important to have a willingness to learn as well.
Thank you, Helen. I think that's probably what you've described there is a very big difference between publishing and bookselling, because publishers create the books they want and then they just want as many people to read them as possible. But when you're a bookseller, you've got to listen to what the reader is looking for. And so we have all the books at our disposal. And so being a good listener is, yeah, that's absolutely right. Emily, what do you think are the key skills?
I mean, I think the number one is obviously a passion for books. I feel most other things can be taught, but you've got to have that interest and that passion. And I don't even necessarily think, you have to have read all the books. You can have a really specific genre that you like to read. I often feel that people feel they need to have read all the classics and know all of that, but that's really not important. I think, like Helen said, it's an importance to learn. I think you've got to be interested in the world of books as well, but just reading. You've got to really love reading, and also not be afraid to muck in, because I think bookselling, people do come in and say, I'm sure you spend all your time behind the counter reading. Oh, you do not. There's a good bit of hoovering and dusting and really the very unglamorous jobs as well. So yeah, I would say passion for books and not being afraid to just get your hands dirty.
Thank you, Emily. I think that's something that might be of interest to the people on the call when you say, you don't have to have read the classics. You don't need an English literature degree. You don't need, to be anything other than a passionate reader. And that, is something that is maybe a bit of a myth, isn't it? That we sort of have to debunk by saying that. So thank you. Okay, so I think the next question, which is one that I think I'm going to ask of everyone, is to just talk through really quickly what your day looks like as a bookseller. So I think, yeah, we're going to have like some similarities and some differences. So I think let's start with you, Emily, this time, and then we'll work round in reverse, as it were.
I really like to get to the shop a little bit early before staff and customers arrive. I think that time sometimes when I enjoy the shop the most, when it's just me and the books. It's just that's so peaceful, and it's a really good opportunity to think about the day. check the displays, do all of the practical things as well, but also just wander around the shop with a cup of tea, really appreciating where I am and what I get to do. I tend to always start the day like that, even I'm not always in the shop. I do normally a day or two a week I'll work from home to do all the buying of the books. So rep calls and all the kinds of stuff that you really, I admire people who can do it in the shop. But I just get so easily distracted, you know, if the phone's ringing and people are asking me questions. So I do try and set aside a day a week to be at home and do all the things that require concentration. But day to day, just being in the shop, I love that too. Serving the customers, and I often find that my day is dictated by what deliveries arrive. I can have a great plan for the day, and then suddenly 7 boxes turn up, and that's the day gone. So I think it's important in bookselling to not have too idealistic plan for the day, just see where it goes.
Thank you, Emily. And I can see in the Q&A there's a question about, is there such a role as a buyer for the bookshops and do they travel around? And I think we can answer that quite quickly. Is the buyers come to us in some form or another. We don't go out to do the buying unless it's to like the sort of annual trade show or something like that. But generally the buying is done either, like you said, from home, or I know some people do it from like a cafe sometimes, or you know, or in the bookshop, but generally it's the publishers and their sales representatives come to us rather than us traveling around. Okay, Amanda, talk us through your like a random idea of what a day could look like for you.
I have a manager in my shop, so he looks after the day-to-day operations of the shop. So I'm kind of in and out of the shop doing like every day is different. There's so many different hats that you wear as a bookshop owner. Yesterday, for example, I was all about events. We were bookselling at the Leeds Book Awards, which is a big day for school children who vote on their favorite books. It's like an amazing day. 400 kids in this big room, and it was bonkers. And then in the evening we had an author event with the author A.A. Dand, and I was managing that in the evening. So yesterday was all about events. Tomorrow could be all about buying, and I'll have several rep meetings and decide what books we're going to buy in for the shop. And the day after, I might be sorting out who's collecting the bins, or you know, who's going to wash the windows of the shop. Like, it's really anything and everything. That's one of the things I love about it, is the variety. There's so many things going on that you get involved in that you never get a chance to get bored.
Thank you, Amanda. Helen, talk us through a possible day, average day is the thing.
First of all, I'm so sorry, I must apologise. A friend of mine just knocked on the door then, although I had a note on the door, and I was trying to sort of signpost to her that I was on a call. So I'm so sorry if I was doing something strange on a camera moments ago. So yeah, I mean, no day ever looks the same. I mean, very importantly for me, it always starts with coffee. That's the most important thing. But so I run a shop. My husband is in here as well, and you know, we do everything. We'll come in, have the coffee, check the emails, dust the shelves, you know, all the sort of cleaning, you know, caretaking work that needs to be done to keep the shop looking nice. Last week before last, like Amanda, we were busy in events mode. We had Krista Cowell here, so we did a day of school events with her, whereas on other days we'll be here all day serving customers. Days like today, we'll be meeting publisher reps, so that touches on the buying books aspect that we were just talking about as well. Publishers have reps who will come into the bookshops and show us books that are upcoming, so that will be when we do our purchasing. But yeah, nothing ever really looks the same. But at the end of the day, we always finish up by seeing what's sold and try to remember something good that's happened that day as well. Lots of good things happen in bookselling, and it's always nice to finish the day thinking of something good that's happened.
Thank you, Helen. Okay, Paul, I think yours is going to be slightly different to the rest of us potentially. Tell us about like what a day looks like for you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, exactly the same. It can be very varied. No day is ever the same. I suppose in my role, I am there to support booksellers and the managers and the teams. So it's very much around about that staff development, finding out what they need, how to support them through their days, but also their careers. So I can be sitting down with doing a review with somebody, but also I can be inducting somebody new into the team. I could be interviewing. It's everything, anything sort of people focused ultimately. But what I always try and make sure I do, no matter what, is to be on the shop floor, talk to customers, and touch the books and feel the books, because that is ultimately why we all got into bookselling, because we love books. So even though my journey might have gone slightly in a slightly different direction, it is still very much about the books. And I suppose we're also very much led by publishing as well. So if there's a big book coming out, then we'll be doing something towards that. And then if there's an event happening or something newsworthy, then that will change things as well. So as I think we've all said, incredibly varied, but really good fun and really enjoyable.
Thank you. So, my next question is, what sort of person would you recommend your job to, like the book selling job that you do? And I'm going to ask that, first of all, I'm going to ask that to Amanda. Yeah.
So my job of owning and running a bookshop, I would say you need to be a bit of a jack of all trades. You have to get your head around a lot of different things. You don't have to be brilliant at them. The beauty of having once you get your bookshop up and running and it's making enough money to pay the bills, is you can hire people in who are really good at the things that you're not good at. So I hired, one of my first hires was someone who had been a manager at Blackwell's. So I didn't know anything about anything and he knew all the things. So that was great. And I've just hired a marketing manager to kind of take our marketing to the next level, because I can do it, but having someone who knows how to do it is great. And I think you just need to be good at relationship building. I think that's a really key thing in this job, either on the book selling side and the relationships that you're building with the customers who come into the shop, because your customers, you build that relationship with them, they'll come back, every week, every couple of weeks. That's really important to the well-being of the shop, but also the relationships you build with the publishers, so that they'll, tell you about the newest releases and they'll pitch for you for events. The relationships that you build with the authors who'll go out there and be champions for you in the same way that you're champions for their books. I think the relationships you build with other businesses in the town so that you can work together is really important. I think, yeah, you need to be great at relationship building.
Thank you, Amanda. And I'm going to ask the same question to Helen. What sort of person would you envisage could also do your job?
Yeah, I mean, I'd 100% agree with Amanda that relationship building is really important. I mean, she's already mentioned about, relationships with publishers, authors, etc. Of course, customers, people who are coming in to buy the books, we want them to have a great experience, of enjoying the space, talking with us, we listen to them, we make recommendations. So that's really important. Retford's a small town, so the point about building relationships with other local businesses is really important as well, because we can support each other. We know things are tough on the high street at the moment, and the more that businesses can support each other and work together, the better. Even things like, for instance, on social media, where appropriate, retweeting authors, recommending books. If your local cafe across the road has got a great offer on a reshare of something of that, those are all really positive ways to build up those positive relationships. And to go back to Emily's point earlier as well, have a deep passion for books. You don't have to read all the classics, but you really do need to have a passion for books. And if you do, that will absolutely come through in everything you do.
Thank you, Helen. I know Amanda mentioned something about hiring in a marketing manager, and we do have a question as well that asks, I mean, the question is from Caitlin and asks about larger chains and having specialisms, as it were, within book selling roles. And I think that's not something that's unique to Change. I think that is like, there are definitely, I have very specific roles for different booksellers in my team, but I think just with the marketing and publicity, do you think that this is a very key skill and a requirement for book selling these days? So I'm going to ask that to Emily. What would you say?
I don't think so at all. I don't think, like you said, Fleur, in our team, everyone everyone pitches in, but everyone has the things that they are good at, and that they focus on. For example, I mean, Ian, who owns the shop, he loves a spreadsheet. The rest of us, we're not so keen. Charlotte and I do a lot of the social media stuff. That's mostly because we're under the age of 50, and can understand it. Not saying that people over the age of 50 can't, but our colleagues do, I think, roll their eyes slightly at what we're doing. I think they think we're being a bit silly sometimes, but that's sort of been a great new avenue for us to explore. But like I say, everyone just has their focus on what they love. And so I don't think marketing is definitely a skill that you have to have. If you're good at it, that's great because you can find new ways to promote the shop. But I wouldn't say it's essential at all. And yeah, like I say, we all have our own things that we enjoy.
Thank you. And just the same question to Paul, because obviously within the chains there will be jobs in head office as well as jobs in like the smaller shops. And so yes, what do you think about like existing skills? And I suppose this comes into the sort of the question of transferable skills as well, because we've all established that loving books is like an absolutely essential part, but so many people can be just doing that in their spare time anyway, and they maybe are looking to move from other industries, or they've had different training at university or what have you. So yeah, what would you say, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I really wholeheartedly agree with Emily. I think it's something that it's there. If the skill is there, it's definitely usable within the store, within the company. We obviously have people who are in marketing, in publicity within Waterstones, but actually within the bookshop, it's about those organic skills that you enjoy doing, that what you can bring to the store. If you do have a real interest in it, then there's an avenue for you to sort of utilize those skills, but you definitely don't need those particular skills to be a bookseller and work in the store at all. And obviously we do a lot of events. We've talked a lot about events. So obviously it can link into that, and there is social media. So there's all those uses where you can actually use it, but certainly not anything that you need to be a bookseller, I would say.
Thank you. Okay, so my next question is going to be about the industry as a whole, and this is in part one of the questions that was received in advance, that's sort of asking about who drives the trends, and you know what I suppose what sort of research you could do to sort of help you understand more about that, or at least sort of know more about how that is at the moment. So I suppose, you know, with the trends in mind, just what your opinion would be on that, and I suppose what sort of research you would recommend to anybody looking to move into the industry. And I'm going to start with you, Helen, for that question.
Thank you. I love this question. I find it absolutely fascinating. I spend a lot of time on social media, perhaps more than is healthy sometimes, looking at book talk, Instagram, etc., to see which books people are talking about. As we know, that influencers, you know, when they get behind books, they can really, really boom, and that can help, and that in turn can help shape trends. So I do sort of research that way. I also have a look at Nielsen BookScan, the book charts are published every week in the industry magazine, and I have a look at the books that are selling well, not just the overall bestsellers, but the independent bookshop bestsellers, as the independent bookshop bestsellers are not necessarily going to be the same as the overall bestsellers, and I pay particular attention to the children's books as well. I will also talk to customers when they're coming in, find out what they're reading and where they're getting their recommendations from, and try to react to that accordingly as well.
Thank you. What would you, the same question to you, Emily, any sort of research or anything that you would recommend?
It's difficult because I think our shop, we're very lucky that we're not necessarily, when we look at our bestsellers, we are sort of affected by the bigger trends of the publishing industry. But so much of our best-selling books are dictated by what we're recommending. And that's so rewarding when you see that, you know, the books that you've been pressing into people's hands are sort of the #1 bestseller for the week. there's something about that that really brings a special kind of joy as a bookseller, I think, to know that people care what you're reading and come to you and say, oh, I really love that last one. What can I read next? So I do keep a sort of an eye on the trends of the bigger book industry, but I try not to let it dictate too much what happens in the shop. I mean, it's always a bit embarrassing if a customer comes in for a book that is big everywhere and we don't have it. But I think that's what makes independent bookshops in particular so charming, is the fact that you know your customers and you get to have a unique sway as to what sells and what doesn't.
And it also means as well that, when somebody comes in and they've said, oh, I've seen this book in the charts, or I've read it in whatever magazine this week and I've enjoyed it, because we have that knowledge, we can say, okay, great, you've enjoyed this author, you've enjoyed this book, why not try this one next? And that's really rewarding when they go, oh, okay, yeah, I'll give that a go, and they come back and tell you they've loved it, which is a great feeling.
Thank you both. And I think, both of you, obviously you have like independent bookshops, and I think obviously independent bookshops are very much the personality of the booksellers who work in them, the owners. And I think that is one thing to remember, that whoever you are, you will find your people and your people will find you. And through the interactions and the connections and the relationships that Amanda was talking about earlier, that's how communities are, like the sort of reading communities, the bookshop communities are built. So I suppose that's about being unafraid to be yourself within the role, perhaps. But right, so we've talked a bit about research. I'm going to ask now about what are possible ways that aspiring booksellers can develop their skills in order to get a job in the industry. So I'm going to ask you first, Amanda, what your thoughts are on that.
When I'm hiring booksellers, I've got 4 booksellers in my team. They're all very different. And aside from the passion for books and being able to talk well about books, mostly what I look for are the soft skills. So really, I'm hiring quite a lot on personality and how that person comes across. It's really important for me that my bookshop is welcoming and open and warm, and that there are some people who feel a bit intimidated by bookshops and think they're for intellectuals or whatever, and I really don't want that. So I look to hire people who are kind and warm and open and comfortable chatting with anybody and everybody. There's so much chat in bookselling. That really surprised me, how much chat there is about everything. So I look for people who have experience in customer facing roles, and I just look for people who can make you feel comfortable. I'm not sure how helpful this is in advice, because it's not something, I don't know if it's something you can go and learn, but those are the skills that I think are really important. That it doesn't necessarily matter what you've read, as long as you can talk to someone, understand what's going on for them, help them, make them feel comfortable, make them feel welcome. And I've got some booksellers who are really outgoing and lively, and they're brilliant, and there are certain customers that gravitate to them. And I've got other booksellers who are low key and understated and just warm, and other people will come to them. So I think bookselling is a place where it's a lot about personality. And not a specific kind of personality, different. As long as you've got those key attributes, then you can be really successful.
Thank you. And Paul, what would you say, in terms of, developing skills? Because obviously you're working with a really wide variety of people with your role in supporting like different booksellers within the sort of team at Waterstones, as it were. What sort of
Sure.
skills would you say?
I think Amanda made a really good point there at the end about having different personality types to work in the bookshop, because if every bookshop had the same person in it, then it just wouldn't feel right. It wouldn't be the same. So you do have very different customers wanting to come in and talk to different people, and not everybody is extrovert and not everybody is introvert, but they all work in a bookshop. I think I will put a plug in for the BA scheme on the mentoring scheme. So I think if anybody's really interested in doing that, then actually that seems like a really brilliant way of understanding bookselling and getting into bookshops. I think for me, it's around about book knowledge, growing your book knowledge, and not just about what you know, but what you don't know. So really exploring different genres and books you might not want to read personally, but it's about being that sort of we often say in Waterstones, we're all book lovers, but we are booksellers as well. So we do need to know what people want to engage with customers when they come in to the store to find out what they would like. It's about what the customer would like rather than what we like. Although obviously there's books we love and we want to talk to customers about them, but it's very much around about trying to find out exactly what works for the customer. So I think immersing yourself in books, there's so many ways online, there's book groups, there's social media, there's following authors online that you could do that to actually find out around about the authors, find out about publishing, following publishers as well. So I think all those bits and pieces just to try and give yourself a bit more knowledge, but it's not one personality type, it is open to everybody, I think.
Thank you, Paul. I'm just looking at the Q&A, and something that relates to what you're both saying is Claire has asked, do you have any advice on applying to bookselling positions when you don't have any sales or book-related work experience yet? And I know, Amanda was talking about customer service, I think is what it comes down to, is, being alert to customers. And I know one of my best booksellers I hired because she had literally worked on the customer service desk in Waitrose, and I thought she will have had incredible training already, and she is a very open and a great listener. So I think, if I can ask you, Emily, what advice would you have for someone who hasn't got that direct book related work experience? What would you suggest?
I think following on from what Paul and Amanda said, it doesn't really matter if you don't have that retail experience, but it's a friendliness, it's a warmth. I mean, it's one of the things that I will say to booksellers when they start is, if someone comes through the door, you say hello, you look for eye contact. I mean, we're not the kind of shop that we then say, can I help you with anything today, and follow someone around the shop, but it's just an initial friendliness, engaged. I think we once had she was quite young, girl doing work experience, and she just wouldn't answer the phone for the week. And I think things like that, you've got to be able to try new things. And although you might not be a naturally sociable person, it's just making that effort to engage. So I wouldn't say not having customer service skills is a huge one, but it's just a willingness to appear friendly. And trust me, we all have our moments, I'm sure, with customers that our ability to be friendly suddenly becomes quite difficult. But generally, we're very lucky in the book trade. I think that a lot of people, when they come in to a bookshop, they're there because they love books, so you've got something in common right away. So generally we are very lucky with customers too, but you will get a couple of difficult ones. It's inevitable. So an ability to deal with that when it comes up, but a lot of that can be sort of taught on the job.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot to think about there, and I think the thing to remember is it is very open. And one of the other questions that's come through on the Q&A is where and it's Mariam, I think, has asked, where would be the best places to try and find a job in bookselling? And I know, Paul, you've talked about following publishers and media, and aside from like Indeed and Creative Access and other kind of like actual job boards, I think that following bookshops that you like and being a customer of your local bookshop is going to be one of the most important things. I don't know if I don't know, Amanda, you said you've hired several people recently. Where do you advertise? Where would somebody find a job in your shop?
So we advertise through our social media, and half of the people, more than half of the people who apply, we know already because they're customers of the shop. Being a customer of the shop that you want to work in is perfect. we independent bookshops don't hire that often. We tend to be small. We tend to have small teams. We tend not to hire that often. And when we do advertise, there tends to be a lot of applications. So trying to build that relationship with places that you're interested in from the start will definitely give you a leg up. I've interviewed people for jobs who didn't, looking at their CV, you wouldn't necessarily pick them, but because I knew them and I knew what they were like, and I knew how excited they were about books, and I knew what kind of personality they were, and so I interviewed them.
I will say, I mean, we're talking about, and I'm going to come to you in just a moment, Paul, you know, to sort of get the chains experience, but I think independents, we are very alive to people who looked for jobs in bookselling who have only ever shopped on Amazon, and these are not necessarily going to be our people, because I don't know if I need to explain that any further, but it's like, you know, when I always ask, where do you buy your books, when I'm you know, asking you know, questions in an interview, and I think, you know, independent bookshops are very aligned with libraries. You know, someone says, you know, I don't really buy, you know, my books because, you know, I can't afford to, but I you know, I use my local library or whatever. This is a complete alignment of community that we understand. But like, I think when people say, oh, I just look for the biggest discounts and I shop on Amazon, is kind of not necessarily going to be the sort of person that you are necessarily going to hire. But Paul, yes, where would somebody who is looking, say, for a job in Waterstones or what have you, you know, is there a particular way that you think that they should maybe start to make those connections as well, in the way that Amanda has described?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think it's really very much the same. We most of our applications are from people who shop with us and come into the store, and we do often know the customers as well who apply for the roles. So I think it is exactly as you're saying. It's getting into the bookshop, being a customer, being around the books, and really, because it is that passion for books, and that's that willingness to learn, that wanting to know more about the books, the authors, the publishing world, what's happening, because it is a real community. And I think if you get into the bookshop, go into your local library as well, obviously, and there's obviously, you can go online and you can look, and you can, you know, we all have a presence online, I'm sure. So you can look at our websites and see what's happening, but go along to the author events that happen in the store as well. But we're definitely looking for people who want to immerse themselves in the bookshop, have that passion. So it is being a part of that bookshop community, I think, is really important.
Thank you. And just to look again in the Q&A, because I can see that time is really going very quickly, and I bet we could talk for so much longer. There is so much more that we could all say. So I think, you know, if I can talk a little bit about events, because one of the questions that I was going to ask you was about the skills that I think perhaps an outsider would not have expected a bookseller to have. And I think, you know, public speaking and events and things like that very much tip into I think, I can't remember if it was Emily or Helen who said about, you know, people imagining that we just get the chance to sit behind the till and read all day long, when that is so far from the reality. And so yeah, I think maybe if you could talk perhaps about unusual skills that you've had to bring to your role, that, you know, will sort of answer for some of the people who are maybe coming to thinking about a bookselling career from outside, or you know, from a different trade, who maybe have transferable skills that maybe someone, you know, wouldn't necessarily have expected. So I think if I start with you, Helen, for that.
Yeah, so somewhat naively, when I came into bookselling, as I mentioned earlier, I was sort of one day a week helping out in a second-hand bookshop, and then suddenly taking on a bookshop and moving into new books was a whole new thing with lots to learn. And I didn't really realize how important it is to really analyze your sales data, and which sounds obvious now I mention it, but you know, the idea of returning books if they didn't sell, and really keeping an eye on that, was something that had just never occurred to me. And I know it's something that booksellers quite often mention, that they're not really sure how to handle returns. And for anyone listening in, one of the things in the book trade, when we take on books, we can have agreements with publishers, distributors, where we can return things. For instance, if we've got too many books, and things like that. And I have a small bookshop. It's the same for most independents. I think our space is limited, and we always want to give you a big, wide, diverse selection of books. So it's really important to really use your analytical skills and see what's selling, and knowing when to say, okay, maybe this book isn't for right now, but maybe in a few months' time it might be. And that was something that I hadn't really considered. So yeah, analytical skills, I would say, are definitely used a lot more than I was expecting.
Analytical skills, that's perfect. And I should have said at the beginning, this is Lisa M's question about people transitioning from other industries that I'm sort of hoping that we're sort of answering in this point. So yes, so I wonder, Emily, what would you say? Any sort of unusual skills that either you've had to learn on the job, or you feel that somebody could perhaps bring to the job?
I think one of our most valuable members of staff was somebody who was training to be a social worker at the same time, because I think I didn't realize quite how many vulnerable people flock to a bookshop. And it's lovely that they consider the bookshop a safe space to be, but knowing what skills to apply if somebody comes in and you notice that something's not quite right about them that day, and knowing how to act in that scenario. All of our staff, we're very lucky in Hayes, we've got a wonderful dementia centre, and all of our staff have had training with them to help some of our customers that have got dementia, and things that, you know, like offering them a seat if they're just looking a bit unsteady that day. So I think that kind of, not quite social worker skills, but bordering on, because the bookshop is a safe place for people, and you want them to feel that they're welcome anytime.
Thank you. So I think I'm sorry I'm not going to get through all the Q&A questions, but I feel that this is an important one to talk about, and that is I'm just going to ask you, Paul, about career progression. So, you know, I know a lot of people are really keen to know about how to get in at the beginning, and I know that Josie will be talking in a minute just a little bit about the ways into the mentorship scheme, which I think will hopefully give some people who are, you know, maybe feeling that they don't have enough experience or aren't getting, you know, as far as they want. So I'm hoping that will be like the bridge. That's what we're hoping for people. But yeah, just what about what happens when you're in? Like, if you could talk a little bit about career progression in your experience.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can only speak from sort of Waterstone's perspective, and obviously it's a much larger company. But I think a lot of these skills that we're talking about, we all have within bookselling. So from my own point of view, I started as a bookseller, and I worked my way up into a senior bookseller and then an expert bookseller, which just meant I had more knowledge. But ultimately, I ran a small store, then I ran a larger store. I then have progressed into, I've been an area manager. I'm very much involved with HR, events as well, facilitated training. I've been involved with sort of book buying as well, but also all the related products that we talked about. So the cards and bits and pieces like that, the stationery items that we sell. So it's incredibly varied. So I think if you do start and you join, and I think this will apply to independent bookshops as well, there's so many opportunities to be involved with all sorts of all the assets or aspects of working in a store. And also I think longevity as well. As I say, I've been here over 30 years, so, and still bookselling. So there's a whole way of, you know, diversifying and trying out different skills and really enjoying what you're doing and focusing on the things that you really love, but bringing that to bookselling. So great opportunities, I would say.
Thank you, Paul. And thank you, Josie. So I'm afraid that's the end of like our sort of more formal question piece. But just to really thank Paul, Emily, Helen, and Amanda for like all your insights and your time and everything. And I hope that we've in some way made bookselling sound as great as we all believe it to be, know it to be. Thank you.
I mean, I feel I'm going to give you all, just while I'm talking, a moment to think about the answer to your final question, which is either your favorite event you've ever organized or a book that you could recommend to this audience. So I'll quickly whiz around and do that afterwards. But I'm echoing Fleur's incredible gratitudes to our panelists and to all you, the audience, for joining and for your amazing questions. I do apologise that we haven't got round to everything. We haven't obviously got quite enough time. We've had one particular question which is asking for the social media handles for your individual bookshops as well. So please feel free to send them over to us and we'll circulate them to everybody afterwards. But I'm just going to take a minute or two now to just talk a little bit about the mentoring program that we are running. So it's a partnership, as I said, with the Booksellers Association, and the idea is to kind of break down barriers and myths about the sector. Now, the key thing about this is that it is 15 partnerships, the length and breadth of the UK. So we have the most amazing booksellers already registered from all sorts of different bookshops and in all sorts of different geographical locations. So what do you need to start to join? There's two different types of people that we're looking for. Either somebody who's aspiring to get into the sector. So you may have relevant you're hoping to get employment either in a kind of as an entry-level role or a trainee opportunity, or you're already working in bookselling, but you want to progress within your career. Perhaps you want to set up your own bookshop, and you want some guidance on how to do so. So what do you need to apply for the programme? You need to demonstrate a love of books. That's the most important thing. We've heard that loud and clear throughout this webinar. So demonstrate a love of books, an enthusiasm for working with the public, and an interest in the career. You obviously need to be able to show us how your passion, your desire to collaborate with an established professional who's giving their time to us to learn and to develop professionally. What it will actually look like is an hour a month over a 6-month period, and you will get training. The mentors will get training and the mentees will get training on how to make the most of the relationship, so your expectations are aligned between you. We're going to be kicking off the programme in late July 2025. Partnerships can be virtual, so don't worry wherever you are based throughout the UK, but we will obviously try to match the mentees with the booksellers on the basis of lots of different criterion, but shared interests, possibly location, and other characteristics as well. So the key things, the eligibility criteria for this programme is you need to be available between July and December, because that's when the programme's taking place. And like I said, that can be virtual. You need to be over the age of 18, I'm afraid. Hopefully we'll run this again in the future if any of you are younger than that. But so you need to be over 18, still in educational training, or aspiring to work, or looking to progress within the sector. And importantly, you need to identify as being from a group that's underrepresented in the sector. This includes, but it's not limited to, people who identify as Black, Asian, or from any other ethnically diverse backgrounds, people with disabilities, people with characteristic of gender reassignment, people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, caregivers, people who've come to the UK as refugees or asylum seekers, or many of those characteristics. You don't. So yes, I appreciate that. It might sound a bit overwhelming, but all the details are on our website. And we've also posted it on the Q&A function on this chat, and we will circulate it afterwards. So you can find that on the Creative Access website. So while we move on to our feedback, which is on that QR code that you can currently see on your screens, it's going to give you plenty of opportunity to, we love feedback. It's really important for us to know what we can do differently in the future and what you would like the sorts of events you'd like us to put on. So while you're doing that, I'm going to quickly whiz around the room and ask each of you for either your favourite event you've done or a book to recommend. And I'm going to start with Paul, please.
I'll quickly say my favourite book I've read recently is a book called Gunk by Saba Sams. Just really enjoyed it. Fairly new author, brilliant. Just look it up, you'll love it.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Paul. And Emily.
So a book I'm reading at the moment and I'm really enjoying is a book called I Leave It Up to You by Jin-Woo Chong. And it's about somebody who wakes up having been in a coma for most of the pandemic, and it's kind of a romance. It's got lots going on and I'm really enjoying it.
Oh, sounds fabulous. Thank you. Amanda.
The book I'm currently recommending to everyone is called I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. Blew my mind. It asks all the big questions about what life is and what makes life worth living. And I loved it.
Fantastic. Thank you. So far I haven't heard of any of these, so I'm very excited. Helen.
I'm going to mix it up and go for an event, and that's our event of Crystal Cowell. a couple of weeks ago, the Former Children's Laureate. It was our first ever big multi-schools event, and we saw nearly 1,100 children, and we even managed to get children train passes so they could come in from schools free of charge to hear from her, and that was just a really special event.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you for telling us about that, Helen. And last but by absolutely no means least, our host us with the mostess, Fleur.
I'm going to go for an event too, and because we do so many events with authors, I think one of my favourites was one that I did with a fashion designer that I just really like, and we did a sort of combined it with International Women's Day. She's of Nigerian heritage, and I asked her to choose 3 books that had been really influential on her journey to the success that she had, and it was just really lovely because it was very reader focused, which is kind of what we're all about. So yeah, that was my favourite.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And what I would say to all of you, to people watching, that we talk about not having a retail experience or customer experience, but you can demonstrate your passion for books by having a book talk or a bookstagram, and that's a really brilliant way of doing it. So I would encourage all of you to do that because it really demonstrates the depth of your passion and your interests. So on that note, like I said, the Booksellers Association have got a LinkedIn page, and they're on X and on Facebook, and all these fantastic individual bookshops also have social media handles, and of course you can follow us on @Creative Access. So thank you to our panelists, and all of you watching, please apply for the mentorship. We're really excited about this, and have a lovely evening, everyone.
Thank you, Josie. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.